So everybody basically said, we had 24 children gunned down. Texas, guess what we're not going to regulate? But guess what we can start turning our attention to, because we are sadly underfunded and under-resourced. So we have had, and to the legislature's credit, a remarkable run of improvements in our state's behavioral health system. Now, don't get me wrong. In FY 2014, I think is the last stats we have on the statewide spending, right? Texas is, when you include Puerto Rico, we are 50th out of 51, right? Mississippi, like, totally doubles us on a per capita basis with it. We are really, really under-resourced. To the legislature's credit, they have put a lot of money into this system, but anybody that watches NASCAR, when you start 50th out of 51st, you ain't winning the race on one lap. Right, so we've got session after session after session of improvements, and thankfully this session we had a whole lot of improvements on. So I want to briefly describe the 4 that we have here. The other thing that I think is critical in this, and to give them a lot of credit, House Speaker Joe Strauss established the Select Committee on Mental Health that he put everybody from Garnett Coleman, Sophronia Thompson, Sarah Davis. If y'all remember, if y'all have heard of those names, these are not people you put on a committee that's not going to do anything. I mean, I don't know if any of y'all have ever argued with Representative Coleman, but immediately afterwards you say, I'm sorry, we'll never do it again. They put, and Miss T, Sophronia Thompson is probably the most senior member of the legislature, other than, I think, former Speaker Tom Craddock. So he put senior appropriators, senior members of chairmen of different committees on. So this was a real deal kind of what they used to do on Sunset Committee, old school, where they would go around for a number of different hearings across the state to gather information. And the city of Houston participated a lot in this, as did Mental Health America, Greater Houston, on particularly your integrated healthcare and your veterans assistance program. One of the biggest bills to be able to pass was this Parity Act that Representative Ford Price out of Amarillo carried. Right now, we're hearing a lot of federal debate about the new healthcare legislation that's coming through on essential health benefits, right? And saying like, look, if this isn't included, then why am I buying insurance if it's not going to be covered on it? This bill, HB 10, really puts in the state statute that if you're offering insurance in the state of Texas, you will be covering behavioral health. And we're actually going to pay somebody at the Texas Department of Insurance to make sure that plans have enough providers in their network where people have access to services. You could have told me this was going to pass 4 years ago, and I would have bet you $100 against it. I mean, it really is an amazing piece of legislation because Ford Price, as chairman, worked with his other members to say, if people have insurance and they still don't have access to behavioral health services, we're kidding ourselves if we're ever going to get ahead of this. So we have one of the most progressive laws now on parity that's come through. So I encourage you to look at this mental health and substance use on disorder parity, as it's really a pretty big one. Okay, the next one that we have ties into a program that we have here at the City of Houston. Who's familiar? Y'all seen the Houston Sobering Center? I heard a little bit about it on what it's done. There you go. I have multiple times, like once a month for meetings. But our Sobering Center really was, the focus was we do not need to put people who have a substance use problem, and that is their crime, in jail. We need to get them treatment, right? And I really give a lot of kudos not only to Mayor Parker, who helped this, but particularly with then Councilmember Ed Gonzalez, who worked really hard to be able to build this up. In 2010, I may be off on the years on this, but the number decline is true on it. The last year before the Sobering Center, we arrested and took to jail over 20,000 people for public intoxication. Okay, their crime was they were intoxicated in public. The year after the Sobering Center opened, it was below 2,000. The savings in man hours and the quality of being able to get these folks not only the help that they needed, but in a safe situation, you know, it really is pretty remarkable. If you click on the certified peer support specialist part, we talk not only about this bill itself, but how it ties into the city. So at the Sobering Center, we have a number of folks that specialize in what's called certified peer support specialists, right? So these are folks that share that lived experience. Everybody's kind of familiar with AA and that kind of talk. Well, the certified peer support programming really works toward a very structured type of licensing that comes in with somebody with that shared experience. Now we're going to be able to follow other states like they've done to allow Medicaid reimbursement for that service. So you got a whole lot of folks, and especially if in a state that is under-resourced for behavioral health, you know how much you have rapidly expanded the workforce by being able to have folks with that lived experience, being able to help folks going through the same situation. It is key. It's probably, aside from parity, the single biggest thing that we have done. I know Susan's group has like the nation's award-winning veterans peer service for our veterans court. Really a terrific job being able to provide those same type of resources that we've had for our veterans and vets court to now the population at large. Really a key deal, and being able to get reimbursed for it is particularly key with it. So I bring a lot of this up to be able to say, not only was this important for the House Committee on Mental Health, by the way, it's a 109-page report, but it's really good and shows like, this is government actually looking at a problem, doing a good job of researching it, and then showing some examples of passing legislation. So kind of bragging on our state of Texas, because I know I crap on them a lot. They do a good job with that. Mayor Turner provided written testimony in support of it. We had a lot of folks come up to testify, as well as our friends from the Hogg Foundation on peer support, which I think Colleen Horton can finally sleep at night now that this bill is passed, because that was a big one for her. Okay, so if we go back, we've got two more under behavioral health that I wanted to go over real quickly. As we scroll down, one of the ones that we fought for really hard, perfect right there. While I was at Mental Health America, was an issue called Medicaid suspension. So right now, when you're incarcerated longer than 30 days, you lose all your public benefits. When something's terminated, you have to reapply, right? And when you're in prison, you can't use your public benefits because you're incarcerated on it. However, let's say you get arrested because you were trespassing and you serve 45 days, right? Now your Medicaid that you were on has now been terminated, and upon release, you have to go and reapply, and that's a 3-month process. You get a lot of people probably going to get arrested because you haven't been able to provide the medical support that you need. Being able to suspend, like turning it off in the first 48 hours once you get into jail, and then turning it on the 48 hours when you leave, will allow us to make sure that, one, we can have follow-up visits to folks as they get out, to make sure that they have that coverage so that really they can get the help that they need, and frankly, we as a society need to be providing on it. So this was a big deal in 2015. We were able to get this done for juveniles, so under 18, which is kind of crazy because the argument is like, you know, we don't want to pay money for this. There's a lot more kids on Medicaid than adults. I told that to the legislature. So this session, we were able to come back and be able to get it for adults. So this was a really big deal. This was, to give credit for him, then Sheriff Adrian Garcia did a lot of work on this issue, so it was a key one. In fact, I've got to give a good quote from Andy Keller. He's the president now of the Meadows Mental Health Public Policy Institute. He was in front of the Texas Public Policy Foundation. It's like the farthest right-wing shot in Austin, but they actually do have a lot of good criminal justice measures on it, so I give them credit. And they were like talking about Medicaid suspension. He's like, don't do this because you're a good person or you're smart. Do this because it's stupid not to. And he actually uses the term stupid. You got to quote it in there if you want to click on that. Whenever an academic calls people stupid, I just and then the last one here, I think a lot of folks are familiar with it. Speaking of Chairman Coleman, was the Sandra Bland Act, and talked about how law enforcement is going to change and update procedures to much more accurately reflect a much more safe intake for folks that are struggling with a behavioral health issue, and really make sure our law enforcement officers have the training that they need to recognize this, and that their jails are held accountable for the standards that they do set. Particularly in Sandra Bland's situation on her arrest and detainment, you just had box after box after box fail to be checked on what we needed to be able to do as a society to help this person, and frankly procedures that had been laid out, and we did not do that. Thanks to Chairman Coleman, and then locally here, our good state senator John Whitmire, that is going to change, and it's in state law. So if it's not going to procedure, then they're going to have to answer to those two gentlemen. God bless them for that. So those are the main areas that we have with our website. You guys are getting a preview of it because, don't tell anybody, but I haven't shown this to City Council yet. And so I would get in a whole lot of trouble if I sent it out and didn't have their look over yet either. We would have done it this week, except for we don't have a City Council meeting this week because the mayor is in Europe at the World Petroleum Conference. So you guys got the like sneak preview with it. What I hope to be able to do with our shop is to do similar work, not only at the federal level, but what we're looking at on this special session. Right now, we're in a really kind of weird situation to where the governor has called a 30-day special session and basically said, okay, first we have to take care of this sunset bill for the Texas Medical Board because we all agree that that needs to happen, right? Everybody's on the same page. Then we're going to address these 19 other topics that I really want to get to, and that's where you get everybody going. Whoa. Out of those 19, 8 deal with cities and our work. That you didn't know we're that horrible, huh? The state of Texas coming down on us on a number of different areas. Everything from our ability to regulate trees and tree ordinances to our ability to, we already have a property tax cap. Now we're going to have a spending cap on top of that. Just really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to say, you know that 1/3 of your property tax bill that you just get really mad about? No, I like the 50%, but you're not funding money. They want to go after us on that. What are a couple of the other ones that are just,
what's going to happen with the bathroom bill?
So here's a good thing. I'm a Rockets guy, all right? I do not like the Spurs. San Antonio's not supposed to visit, so I don't want to say a good thing about San Antonio. San Antonio is hosting the Final Four in 2019, right? And guess who's from San Antonio? House Speaker Joe Strauss. And what does Joe Strauss not want to do?
Who's the Final Four?
And Speaker Strauss, to give him credit, how many of y'all read the New Yorker article that came out about a week ago? Hats off to him for really laying it down. His quote in that article, and if you look at that one's in particular, when we look at the witness list for and against on SB 6 on the bathroom bill, you had, testimony after testimony after testimony of people, of a vulnerable population of our trans community that came up, introduced themselves. This is obviously the first time some of our legislatures that have ever had someone was a member of the trans community. It was, unfortunately, the votes didn't change on it, but I do think just as a human interaction, that was good for them to be in the same room and across the table for someone having them share their story. Joe Strauss straight up said, don't bother sending me a bathroom bill. I will not have the suicide of any Texans on my hands. And just kind of like said, you want to go holy roller, talk about women's privacy and all this, here's where I'm at. And you know what? I think what you've seen from this website, Speaker Strauss has more than a leg to stand on what he's done for behavioral health. And you want to come at him on that? Have fun, Lieutenant Governor. So the other part of that article that I thought was very entertaining, who can name the one bill that the legislature is required to pass every session?
Budget.
The budget. The budget. Guess what they have to pass during the special session? Guess who told the New Yorker, I don't have to pass anything in the special session? Joe Strauss. So, yeah. I think the odds of the bathroom bill going through Joe Strauss's house are not high. So he said with that. But the other things that are within the legislative session that deal directly with the city, it's very hard to kind of inform the public, and then while you're informing, do advocacy. I would rather people be able to actually learn to know that you really care about it. General Eisenhower had this definition of leadership, and he said it was making someone do something that you want them to do because they want to do it. I really want to just provide enough information for people to be able to say, hey, this totally makes sense. Like, are y'all mad about the scrap tire deal? Because I sure am. I'm very excited about it. I'd rather have people say, yeah, this makes sense. The city's trying to do work on it, and you're vetoing legislation, because it really ticks me off. Someone, they can drive to Pasadena and they got 64 tires, dump them off on the road, but HPD can't pull them over there. So, do you have questions?
So, when do you expect this to go before City Council?
Next Wednesday. I think it'll be part of the mayor's report, and we'll have it out then. So, we'll have it up and on there. I really just wanted to have our office be able to better inform the issues that we worked on. A lot of it, you wouldn't think. We had another issue we worked on, we didn't list in the website, it was about parking in yards. It ended up taking a week of our time to be able to try to deal with parking in yards. We had Senator Betancourt saying we need to have a citywide referendum about parking in yards. But the other big thing that we wanted to be able to show with this, and it's a separate URL that I can give you, we actually link to it, but it'll probably be easier just to type it in, is our Houston houstonpensionsolution.org. Anybody hear anything about pension stuff? Anybody hear a firefighter?
No, you're right.
Yeah. They were not too happy with it, so it's houstonpensionsolution.org. Here we go. So you may kind of recognize the format a little bit from this one. Really, this is all one big long page, but what we tried to do, we actually went to legislative offices and had them bookmark this page as their staff, because when you scroll through, we included a lot of different information from news articles, quotes from experts, videos, but if you're able to scroll down on it, we did one thing that I thought was really pretty neat. Yeah, so there's our expert quote. Keep going down. Some kind of an outline, and keep going down. Newsrooms, a bunch of good articles. Keep going down. Videos, and then scroll down there. Boom, you got every supporting document you could ever want with regards to our Houston pension plan. Because frankly, it's not fun to explain. It's like, it makes that campaign finance reporting look sexy, right? I mean, it really can be rough on it, but what we wanted to do is be very transparent with our information, be able to put it all up in one place. So if you guys ever have any questions on that, we'll have that side up and going. I know we're going to do a refresh because we really tried to actually take a breath after session and haven't been able to go through an update, but wanting to be able to give accurate information on it. As city employees or the government relations department, we're not trying to persuade anybody on the pension obligation bonds. It's going to be on the ballot in November, but if you would like to know the full context of how they fit into the scheme with it, this isn't a vote for or against. This is here's how they're part of the plan. So,
Who comes up with the ballot language for the November referendum?
City council.
Is it city council?
So that'll be what's listed on there.
Do you plan to update the page during the social session?
Maybe it depends on how, you know, if we think the issues really like gets out there as far as, you know, that things like Uber had a long running city back and forth with. Frankly, our tree ordinance is really like lame compared to other cities. We don't regulate trees on residential property. We do in the right of way. We really like not to lose that authority. So as they come up, one of the reasons we put SB 2 on the tax caps is one of our major legislative battles, is we knew that would come back in the regular session, so we have a whole lot of info and supporting docs on that. But we may, if it gets to be kind of a big issue with it. But
I remember a couple of years ago, there was an issue on Kirby near Southwest Freeway where there were trees in the right of way planted by Trees for Houston. They were chopped down in the middle of the night by a Wendy's franchise owner. And the city actually fined the contractor like lots of money, several hundred thousands of dollars. Does that have something to do with the genesis of the tree? Is that an incident that factored into this?
I don't think this was a factor that led to Governor Abbott on it. Frankly, Governor Abbott has a personal history with the tree, not only his home in Austin, but also with his accident and everything. So I think it mainly comes from his home in Austin, frankly, on regulations of residential property. We would sure hate for our ability to regulate trees and ordinances that we have in there for our city values to get swept away because he's mad at the city of Austin for how they treated him. Frankly, this is from what we've heard on it. So in Dallas, they had a particularly galling example. In front of that Wendy's was absolutely a big deal. Dallas on North Forest Lane, if you look this up, had these huge oak trees. It's real beautiful. And there was a storage kind of big boxing deal for people pulling. They wanted people to be able to see their son in the deal, so they just went. I mean, I went cut the whole thing down and just leave these bars. It was on North Forest Lane. So it was like, hey, if you want to take away municipal authority, here's what you're going to be dealing with on it. So we're hopeful that reasonable people will be like, that's the saying is sunset and sunny day, where you're like, yeah, take some medical board's important, but we'll see y'all doing. That's kind of what we're rooting for. Not to say that there aren't measures that are on the call. So the governor has made this call for the medical board, along with 19 others. One of them is a study on maternal mortality rates. because Texas saw a skyrocket amount, which I think our tax law itself probably have everything to do with it, but we're gonna be able to focus some state resources on being able to study the problem. Everybody agrees that we should be doing that. Frankly, all of us think that we should be doing a heck of a lot more than studying it, but at the very least, we should pass that legislation. So there was one other thing that I wanted to make sure to mention to your group in specific, as you guys are, first of all, is this a good product? Like, is this actually kind of informative on what your stuff is? Because we can look at it all day in our office and think that's awesome, but it's like, okay, the John King public doesn't like, all right, this makes sense, then, you know, really not. But I hope this kind of informs a little bit about what we've done, and then once we launch it, if you guys want to tweet good stuff about it, that would be awesome. The only reason we were able to do this is Mayor Turner lets us. So he's like, yeah, you should inform what we worked on, and particularly the behavioral health content. I'm really glad that he's enabled us to be able to continue to work on it. So speaking of behavioral health content, why don't I just introduce Susan for you to talk about a little bit about MHA and specifically your history of being able to produce the guide. And I think this group might be able to pull together some much needed resources on that to better show that information out that you've had with it. So I can turn the floor over to Susan Fordyce, the President, CEO of Mental Health America Great News.
Our organization's been around since 1954, so you know we've been through a lot of changes in Houston, and a lot of changes in mental health, and a lot of things have changed since 1954 when we couldn't even say words. And so we were created by Ms. Emma Hogg, who had her own struggles with mental illness and wanted to create an organization that would be a voice for people that didn't have a voice at that time. Things are certainly better. We have better attitudes, you know, especially younger generations, I think, are going to be the people that really solve the problem. And the kids that are being raised now, I think, you know, see the world very differently. But as an organization, we focus a lot on people who don't have resources. And so the product that we create is a guide to mental health resources that is free services, sliding scale services, not all of them, but the ones that we have found over time that we can refer to and people get the help they need. And as a small organization without a lot of rich resources, all of our resources go into programs. It's a piece of paper that we print out of copier and fold up and then give out. Our guide will be at Harris Health, you know, because they're always looking for resources for people, because we have such a shortage of services that they'll talk about. You know, it's still perennially at the bottom in terms of the amount of capital funding for health. And so we'd love to have this turn into an app and make it really much more user-friendly for people. They can see it, they can click on the thing and go right to the website and you know, be instantly connected. So Bill, when I saw him a week or so ago, said that is something that I need to talk to this group about. But while I have the floor, just for a second, I'd like to share just some of the work that we do that we refer to as systems change, collective impact kind of work. We worked with Houston Police Department in 1999, beginning then to convene all the people that are impacted by, you know, when people with mental illness come in contact with law enforcement, which unfortunately, you know, too many of us work in mental health spend way too much time in the courthouse district. That doesn't happen if you have diabetes and cancer. But our people end up in the criminal justice system. And so we worked with Houston Police Department going back all those years to create the first pilot program for crisis intervention team training 60 officers. Today, we're very proud of the city of Houston and the fact that we are a national best practice in policing for people with mental illness. And we got a Bureau of Justice grant about 6 or 7 years ago so that our officers of HPD could travel all over the United States with all expenses paid for them and the city they're visiting to provide this education and training for other cities. We are, I think, are the only urban police department that has a division. What does it say about the commitment of the Houston Police Department when they have a division for mental health? And so we're real proud of that. More recently, we worked with school districts because so many children are showing up at school at younger and younger ages with real struggles experiencing a lot of trauma. Teachers are suffering every day watching kids suffer. So one of the initiatives we're working on now is, do you know there's like 25 independent school districts in Harris County? Most of us came from places where there's one ISD. We have all these ISDs and all these kids with needs. And like I said, our teachers are suffering every day watching kids suffer and not knowing how to help them. So we're in about 21 or 25 ISDs right now, 3 of the big charters, and trying to get to everybody else and trying to get to independent school districts surrounding Harris to go in and help educators but be able to recognize signs and symptoms of mental illness, as some of the legislation bill that passed in 2013 mandating that kind of teacher training for teachers and teacher preparation programs, and also to be able to provide interventions, best practice interventions in schools. A lot of great pilot projects are proving up that early intervention, which pretty common sense, but we're proving it in Houston schools and what's working for kids. So we're real proud of that. We got a nice investment from Houston Endowment recently to expand our work to be able to provide best practice interventions, providing money to schools to help them prove up these projects. So glad to have an opportunity to meet all of you. Mental Health America still seems to be a well-kept secret, even though we've been around a bunch of years. And if there's anything that I can ever share with you or be of help to you, please find me. If I hear from you, it'll be a big event. Thank you
so much.
Susan's absolutely right. The City of Houston's, actually our mental health division is housed at the Houston Sobering Center. These are our officers that go through not just our de-escalation training that now fully 50% of our city police officers have been through. They go through an extended amount of training. In fact, when we have a CERT team go out, a crisis intervention response team, it's a police officer and usually a licensed professional counselor or another mental health professional that is not like in a polo, so they're not in an officer's uniform, that are able to go out for specific mental health calls when they're called in. In fact, one of the pilot programs that we had, when somebody calls 911, because frankly it is very hard to get information on behavioral health. People call 911 all the time to be able to do it. We actually have 3 full-time professionals that are on the phones at 911 at our Houston Emergency Center fielding those calls, because that's how many that they get. And frankly, it's if we can save, if we can do an informative intervention there as opposed to sending an officer or an ambulance out, it's really cost effective for us to be able to do that as well. Making sure people get the right info that they're calling for in this situation.
So I know you guys only have a few minutes left. I would love to invite you to come speak at a behavior or health act night later this summer, and we'd love to schedule that.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Love to.
Would you mind if we opened up the floor to questions? I know you guys have to go in about 10-15 minutes, but does anybody have any questions for Bill or Susan?
Susan.
Or for Susan?
Since you mentioned 50% of our police officers and officers training,
It is part of the cadet training class, so it is simply a retention as we build up. The seed money that MHA and others, and frankly, a big shout out to Frank Lev and folks that have started this, have now, it's basically just an overall attrition. As we have older officers age out, it will just be 100%, 100%, 100%.
Been a lot of retirements at HPD in recent years.
But I will tell you, I think it's probably the highest percentage of any major police force in America that has gone through that training.
Sorry, Sarah. You mentioned that there were a lot of people, I guess, with mental health issues that end up going through the criminal justice system. How are those people defended? Do you guys take care of
Well,
that?
that's a huge issue here. And it seems like every week in the Houston Chronicle, we see a new story about how people can't afford bail, and there isn't enough help available to them. So that's the disappointing end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, we have some pretty amazing things happening in Harris County. And is anybody familiar with the specialty courts in Harris County? We have some amazing specialty courts, and I'll talk about one specifically. But we have infant courts that really try to keep families together, make sure that mothers get the help they need when they have problems and they get in trouble. We have juvenile courts. We have veterans courts. And example I'll share is about our felony court. We have a judge here, Judge Mark Carter, who went to the legislature and got approval to have the first felony treatment court in Texas in 2009. And that just means that it's a jail diversion program. So instead of, and these are folks that typically didn't have criminal justice involvement before they volunteered to deploy probably multiple times. Most people come back fine, a lot of great experience, they're the kind of guys and women you want to hire, but some people come back different. They come back with anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, a lot of substance use, all kinds of things that are possible. They get in trouble with the criminal justice system, and they, can either be incarcerated or they can become part of a veterans treatment court, at least in Texas. And Judge Mark Carter established court in 2009. It's a 2-year, very, very rigorous program of completing all the things you need to do to get better. All of your appointments, all that kind of stuff. You come to the court twice a month to check in, and if you complete all your work in 2 years, you get that felony dysfunctional record. So once again, you have a chance to support yourself, your family, and get your life back. Get that life back that you had before you deployed. And we're real proud of Judge Carter. He's won a lot of awards this last December. Every state union was able to nominate a judge for the William H. Rehnquist Judicial Excellence Award and go to dinner with their staff at the Supreme Court just before Christmas last year. And our Mark Carter won. And very well deserved. He's been featured on 60 Minutes. You can find a video of our Veterans Treatment Court on YouTube. And that's an example of what happens on the more positive side. But way, way too many people don't have money for bail, don't have money for attorneys, and just really struggle. They're called frequent flyers. They cycle in and out of the jail all the time. Bill talked about the crisis intervention response teams. A lot of times these folks are doing case management on the streets. They have a laptop with all the records of the frequent flyer into jail. They know where they go dumpster diving. They know where they, do pretty much live. And they go out and actually, try to maintain medication management and keep them connected to services if possible, and try to keep them from cycling in and out of the jail. Because it's very expensive for the taxpayer, and they're not getting any better unless. And so this county and this city are very committed to jail diversion and making, diverting people into treatment rather than into incarceration. It's certainly more humane and it's a lot less expensive.
If you're interested in this as a subject, we have a criminal justice hack night coming up in a couple of weeks, where Jay Jenkins from the Texas Criminal Justice Coalition will be talking about defense of the indigent, we'll be talking about juvenile courts, we'll be talking about pseudo decriminalization of marijuana in Harris County, and all of the data sources around that, so you can really start to better understand, just backing in the metrics, how much time, if you're indigent and you're appointed a public defender or you're appointed a defense attorney, they're two different things, how much time you're actually spending with that attorney, and when you do the math, you realize it's a matter of a few minutes. So the representation that the indigent get is terrible.
When you talk about the math on it too, on understanding the scale of problem and why advocacy for behavioral health is really key on it. So the state of Texas, we have 9 state hospitals, which is our inpatient facility on the public system for behavioral health. If you add up the entirety of the number of beds that we have available in the public system from our 9 state hospitals, it is less than the number of people on psychotropic medication that are in Harris County Jail right now. That is our statewide system versus who is there right now on psychotropic medication. Now granted, some of the folks on psychotropic medication committed some horrible crimes, right? So probably shouldn't be doing that. But this is the scale that we're dealing with in the state of Texas. We have 1.7 million people that are over the age of 18 in the state of Texas that have criminal dependence, that have a chemical dependence to a substance use disorder. Guess what percentage of that 1.7 million we treat? It's like GCQ with police. We treat 3%. We have a huge infrastructure problem in the state for behavioral health services. So I hope you've kind of gotten the narrative of building this up and making the best practices. We need to make the provision of behavioral health services a successful business model, frankly. When that happens, we'll be able to see more pop up. But Susan's group continues to do a great job on trying to integrate that here so that when you go to your doctor's office for your regular physical checkup, it shouldn't be any problem to be able to get that behavioral health services right on site as well.
Need to reattach the head to the body. And some of these things are right under our noses, you know, and I'm gonna talk about institutions that I respect. But a lot of our children are getting their care at Texas Children's Pediatric Associates clinics all over the county. There's a bunch of them, and I'm in behavioral health. Try to find a behavioral health provider or a psychiatrist in places that stuff. So the places we all go for our health care and take our kids for our health care, we don't have anything about it. And we don't even think about it.
Do any work with the homeless?
We certainly advocate for services for homeless. We are not a direct service provider, we do public policy, assistance change work that I described. But of course, so many of our homeless are homeless. So, advocating for permanent supportive housing and how to be successful in housing and, all the funding that's for so long, we're working from an advocacy policy perspective. There's some fine organizations that use
So Jeff, one of the reasons I really think that being able to work with Susan is a good idea is because of the difficulty of the system. You need to have an easy place to be able to find this information, right? It is one thing, you've got diabetes to be able to access some stuff. That's okay. You're suffering from some behavioral health crises, and then you're trying to navigate a difficult system. You gotta talk about setting somebody up for failure, right? That's
So
tough stuff.
we have a project right now called Meet, which is a hackathon winner, and it's led by one of the co-organizers of this group who couldn't be here tonight. He's speaking at a different meetup. But it's basically a database of services that can be ranked based on quality, because I know that you have quality services here, and to be able to deliver that in ways that deliver it just in time. So if I'm having a housing crisis, I can text housing, it can geolocate me, and it can spit back a provider directly to me within seconds that has vacancies and that can take me in based on certain criteria. If I'm having a mental health crisis, but what we lack, what we have in technology, we lacked in expertise and we lack in data. So we don't have this list. We need this list. A lot of people need this list. But we would love to collaborate with you on that. And we were just talking about that just an hour ago, 2 hours ago, about how we can triangulate the technology with all the providers who have the expertise. So I think that could be a really quick win.
Here's been another area of alignment, and that is our veteran serving organizations. Combined Arms is a relatively new group, it's become an umbrella over a lot of different VSOs, and they're all located at 2929 McKinney and Warehouse, which is now a level to the post with them. And then that great gift from the Water Project for 5 years to pay the rent for all the VSOs to come in to create a Salesforce product for them so that they can keep track of the people that move in between all the agencies and get those quality measures. So we can really see who's taking care of people once they're given the one hand up and move on. So we want to put it in that too because there's a big need there too. So it's a great time to be with you all.
Mr. Keller. My term for what you're showing us for the legislative website is civic literacy enhancements or AIDS. And while you were going through that, you were describing how those things transpired getting in, in such a well-structured manner that it was almost almost an infographic or flow charts for me. So if you could listen to this
We
is
recorded it.
yeah, and you could almost take that as a rough draft and do an infographic, and it would be a great addition to the page. Those of us who go right from the picture.
No, we were able. Well, first of all, thank you. Glad it was informative. A lot of times we get trapped in our own 3 offices of creating this stuff, and it's got to be making sure that it's informative for people other than us. Whenever you come into a bureaucracy, typically, like when I came into this position, I was needed a timeline of activity that needed to take place and a calendar of events. Some of it was basic, some of it was fundamental to being able to do this, right? Like we had to meet with all the city departments to get there. We had to meet with municipal courts about the expungement issue. We had to meet with HPDs to get some high quality. we had to be able to go through and do all these steps, but I'd really like to be able to make that more civically informative about how this process, comes with it. We were able to present our legislative priorities and our legislative principles to City Council. They voted on them basically to say, we give you authority to go speak to Austin on this behalf. But that necessarily wasn't an overly public process. I'd like to be able to think about doing that much more publicly in the next legislative session, as well as we've never done that for federal guidelines. I'll talk a little bit about federal legislation, but it's something that, we talk about a lot. And frankly, Chris has been doing some great work. President Trump released a budget very early on and gave everybody a heart attack, like zeroed out community development grant funding that does a myriad of services. You would not believe what CDBG funding does for the city of Houston. Yeah. There you go. Okay, this guy probably is. So Chris did a memo just on CDBG funding, and then we did an entire look at the city of Houston budget as it would be affected by what was proposed. It's currently actually being marked up today and tomorrow. Our federal lobby team is working on it. I'd like to be able to figure out how to offer that. The federal deal is a little bit crazy because you're building it as the airplane's taking off, right? Legislative session is 140 days every 2 years, so you've got a little bit of time to plan to do that. But a lot of times, there's this kind of mysterious deal about what the city lobby team does on it, and a lot of it really isn't sexy. It is talking to Representative Dwayne Bohack about parking lots and getting matched up with his council members. So it's really important to connect on that. So, I do hope that you guys can see the product that we were able to produce as far as our results this session. Just the pension bill alone, it is a cost avoidance of $217 billion in FY 18. 217 million. Our general revenue budget's a little over $2 billion, right, that we can play with. That's a huge portion of it. So that's why it was so incredibly important to be much more FY 19, but because we now have these cost control mechanisms with it, we're able to make sure that we fully fund our mental health division at HBD, that we're able to do different programs that are priorities for council.
Last question for you, and then we'll let you go. Will there be a feedback form on the site that when it's released, we can give you feedback like Frank had there?
We're going to try and integrate, so this was still a rough draft. Like one of the deals we had was acknowledgments from like our lobby team, our legislative liaisons within city departments and other things. I will make sure that we integrate one of those. We haven't launched it yet, so that should be an easy button to put on there. And then we'll decide if we're going to put a button for special sessions so we can look at all the issues around that. But hopefully those sign guidance sets up right, so we'll speak. That's it, Taylor, so I'm going to worry about it. I have an angry girlfriend at home, so
Thank you for joining us.
do whatever Susan says.
Thank you so much for
Yes, we do.